All right. So last talk of the day. I'll try to keep everybody awake and keep it interesting. My name is Tim Halloran, and I'm going to do a talk about using MULTIDOS. So this is going to be a beginner kind of presentation, a little more base level, kind of learning some tricks of MULTIDOS, which is an operating system available. This is a Model 1, a Model 3, and a Model 4, as well as the Max 80, for those who know about it. So this talk is to get people out of this mode of TRS-80 use. So you boot up your DOS, and then you dir your Big 5 game disk, and then you type weird and run your game. So if this is kind of where you're at with, x80 use, then we're going to try and get a little beyond that about what you could really do with DOSes. So another possible mode is you start up your machine and hit break, reset, and get into DOS and do lots of stuff with DOS. Again, kind of move on to an operating system, but this is one thing to move folks there. So a good question is, why does anybody care about this? So I think, to me, it's kind of learning. DOSes are an interesting part of the TRS-80 history. So it's in our hobby. So it's an interesting part of that. Another bit is that the TRS-80 had lots of DOSes. Vernon had a slide last year of kind of a tree, and there were like 24 or 25. There's tons of operating systems. And because of the way things worked out, DOSes weren't all controlled by Radio Shack, so there's a lot of independent development going on. And you'll see variety and anything goes attitude in these DOS capabilities, because back in the late 70s, early 80s, folks were just coming up with things. So kind of fun. It's kind of fun getting a DOS to do something interesting. It's kind of cool, I think. So I'll also mention convenience. Nowadays, you really don't need a TRS-80 to do any of this. In fact, this entire presentation, except one slide, was done on TRS-80 GP, which is at George Phillips' site. I linked it there at the bottom. So you can get this and fire it up and go. So MULTIDOS and me. I did not write MULTIDOS. In fact, I've not written a single line of assembly language for MULTIDOS. So how I started was, like many of us, I got disks from IRO when I got a TRS-80. And MULTIDOS read most of the disks, which I thought was pretty cool. So then I got a Fred from Ian, and there was no MULTIDOS, and I was disappointed. Sad face. That was too bad. So I read Priming the Pump, and I learned a little more about where MULTIDOS come from. For those who haven't read the book, it's an interesting story of kind of the history of the TRS-80 interwoven with the development of Lazy Writer. And in fact, they were co-located with Vernon that did MULTIDOS, so you learn a little bit about that. And at TA19, Davis and Teresa Welch, the authors, were there, and I was sort of asking, where's Vernon? And they didn't know. Then, fast forward about 2 years, Vernon Hester, who is the author of MULTIDOS, showed up on a Trash Talk Live. So we got in touch with him and helped him out with a little bit of hardware and got him going. So the end result was last year, Vernon did the keynote talk, and he was actually at Tandy Assembly, and he talked about the history of this, so I'm not going to go into this. And in addition, one big development is we got MULTIDOS working on the Fred on all of the Model 1, 3, and 4. So that was exciting. Again, Vernon did all the programming. I helped him get some power supplies working and things. So it's exciting. So this talk is going to introduce using MULTIDOS. I'm going to cover a bit that applies to all the DOSes and show off a few cool examples to me. So my goal is not to sort of take you through the manual, but to show off some interesting things to get you on your way to MULTIDOS mastery. And some of you may have heard of Esoteric. I'm going to, at the very end, kind of talk about what that is. It's related to MULTIDOS. All right, so let's get started. One command I learned is MULTIDOS has the cat command as well as the dir command. And one of the things, a pattern you'll see as well, is that there's this cat h in parentheses, which can get you help with the commands, although this only works right now on Model 4. And MULTIDOS has a handy feature where it repeats the last command if you hit enter. What this is super useful for is you type the big long command and you forgot to close the disk door, and you hit return and it errored. Now you close the disk door and hit return and it runs. So that's nice. So I'm going to show off these various CADing of disks. CADing showing the allocations, which is A. I and S are invisible and system files being shown. Then we'll see the dir help command, and we'll show dir with reverse sorting. It normally sorts A to Z, and then sorting by accessories. Also in MULTIDOS, you use config to show your drive, so show the config, and then I/O devices. I think some people are used to devices and LDOS. It shows you actual I/O devices. So I've also put the TRS-80 GP command. So let's let it run here. We'll start off. We'll do a cat, and this is of the hard drive. I'm using the Fred Model 3, mostly the Model 3 to make it a little easier to read than the Model 4. I'd recommend you use the thing. So cat A, we see the allocation and cylinders and granules. I'll talk about those in a sec. And let's show the system files and invisible files. SP, you can see eyes, shows you the things there. Let's find out what dir can do, get a little bit of help. Gives you all the information about it. So this is, that H in parentheses is a good thing to remember in MULTIDOS. And I guess, what am I going to do here? Just dir. Okay, that's great. After looking at the help, that's what I came up with. Wonderful. All right. Now I'll resort. So now Zeus shows up at the end, and the A's would be at the bottom, at the beginning. Sorry. And then this one is handy. It shows you the extensions. It sorts it by extensions and puts all the files together. Also, wildcards work, and I'll show some examples of those. These are our disk configurations. This is a Fred. That was the config. And I'll look at the devices help because it'll actually tell you what they all are. Excuse me. And I can see the keyboard and display. All right. So, sorry. Floppy disks, my simple view of the world. You have to understand this a bit to understand the DOSes. They're single-sided, double-sided. Single density is 35 tracks, and double density is 40 tracks. So I give an example of that. Granules are weird. They don't make a lot of sense to me, but you have to understand them to really understand a TRS-80 DOS. So we have a track. This is around the disk, and one track holds 2.5 kilobytes. And the sector, we have 10 of these on most of the TRS-80 disks, and a sector holds 256 bytes. So a granule is like halfway around on this floppy. It's 5 sectors on a track, and 2 granules fill 1 track. So it's really weird, but one thing I'll kind of remember is 4 equals 5. So think of it as 4 granules equals 5K. That's a good way to kind of mentally remember what's going on. But it doesn't make much sense. And I think the origin of this, that this was originally the smallest amount of space. A file had to be at least 1 granule, and that's where it kind of came from. It had to be the 1.25 kilobytes was the smallest amount. But hard drives throw this all out the window. They're a lot different. So there's 32 sectors per granule, which makes the granule be 8K. So on this particular case, which is the MULTIDOS disk, the cylinder, which is sort of like a track, but it's cutting down through all the platters in the hard drive, is actually 48K per cylinder. So we can kind of go through this and see that we've got around 5 meg left on the MULTIDOS system disk on the Fred. So they're a bit different. So granules aren't even the same size depending on what media you're working in. File specs, many of you probably know this, are not like Linux or MS-DOS. This is how they're done. You have a file name with a slash with an extension, then dot the password, which is not in MULTIDOS part of the uniqueness of the file. So the password can change and it's the same file. Then you have the drive spec, and then you have this optional tick in MULTIDOS, which allows you to get to a different side of the disk. I think this is pretty rare in most use. I didn't even know it existed till I read Vernon's manual. So a couple examples. Zeus command 0. Command is special. You don't have to key this in if you run Zeus. So running Zeus and Zeus command are the same. And then I've got :0, so it's on the 0 drive. Wonder.boy and wonder.full on disk 0. Those are the same file, but I'm keying in a different password to access the file. And then wonder:1 is a different file on a different disk. So this bit of background. So putting all this together, here's one interesting case. Some of you may run into this if you start off with MULTIDOS. I'm going to try and get lazy writer running on the MULTIDOS Fred. So I'm going to boot the Fred, put a floppy in, try to copy L, which is lazy writer, onto an empty hard disk partition :1. This is not going to work. So I'm going to use two things. Vernon went on a lot about the date thing, but there's a utility called fixed date. So if you go back to Vernon's keynote, you can learn the history of this date scenario. So it needs to be fixed date. Then I'm going to unlock, protect the disk, and I need the disk password. Then the copy will work fine. So let's actually see this in action. So remember I said usually if you put in a new floppy, go ahead and do cat. There isn't any real reason for this other than Vernon says it's a good idea. I think there's some technical reasons, but it helps MULTIDOS understand the thing. So I'm going to try and copy from floppy 6 to the thing, and it says file access denied. So I'm going to fix date on the entire floppy disk, :6, and we'll see it goes through all of the files and fixes the date. All right, so that's quick. And next thing I'm going to do is remove any protections that are there. So I'm going to do prot :6, and I'm going to unlock. It'll ask me the password, which is just password on this disk. And then I should be able to copy the file over. So let's go ahead and do another cat. We can still read things. All right. And it works. All right, now let's try it out. Should be able to run it. I hope. What's going on? Oh, there we go. Took me a while to figure out how to type L, apparently. Oh, I'm going to look at the disk. All right, sorry. So L command is on our empty hard drive. We have about 6 meg of space. All right, so there's lazy writer. Okay, I hit start to edit, and that didn't work. So backing off, I probably should have read the manual. It says you got to have at least these files or lazy writer won't work. Okay, so that's annoying. Like I got to go do copy for all of that. Luckily, Vernon has a much better approach. There's a tool called VFU, Versatile File Utility, which we're going to actually use to do this. And I'll talk about Esoteric. So let's start down that path, and I'm going to start with VFU. And it can do a lot of different options. I'm going to do a copy, and I'm going to do it from, I'm going to write the files. So I'm going to say, I'll pick the files here. You'll see, you'll kind of get the idea of this. Don't worry about the details. But I'm going to copy from 6 to drive, the hard drive 1. And then it's going to list the files on 6. And I'm going to go through and pick the ones I want, which takes me forever here because the human mind is not good at. The lazy writer documentation has the files in arbitrary order, and Vernon has them in alphabetical. And for some reason, I was having trouble with that. But I'll make a couple of comments about VFU while this is going on. One, it's called FU on Esoteric, and I don't know if Vernon's going to eventually change it on all the OSs, but that confused me. So if you're trying out Esoteric, which I'll talk about later, is a version of MULTIDOS that saves a little bit of memory on the Model 4, you have to use FU. So this program is quite versatile. It can delete files, so if you need something to delete a lot of files, this can be handy. It can also be used to run programs. You can pick something from the menu to run it. You can print things from it. It's very, very handy. So let's hope we're getting to the end of my, my attempt to select all the correct files for lazy writer. And what will happen is once it's done, I actually accept the input, and all the ones with the diamonds will get copied from one disk to the other. So there we go. I say enter, and you'll see it copying with the little thing. It copies the files. Yeah. And it goes through. Once you get familiar with this, it's pretty quick and easy to do. So I hit return because I want to see what I did, so I'll get to see the drive. This is one. So that's what I've got, so I get out of there. Now I'm going to try running Lazy Writer again, and it, surprise, surprise, will actually work because I followed the instructions of the documentation. So I'm just catting it so I can see it's all there. That's what the docs wanted. And we got Lazy Writer. Now when I try to edit something, it will actually behave properly. So. Kind of showing off a little bit of the capability of this. This is the word processor that's discussed in Priming the Pump quite a bit that David Welsh wrote. So if you've never seen it, this is what it is. All right, hooray, we got it to work. All right, so another interesting thing to do is run stuff at startup. So there's an auto command for that. Think of it like autoexec.bat, but you just tell it the command, or there's also a way to group things together with do files that you can do. But we'll do something simple. The free command tells you how much space you have free on all your disks. We'll go ahead and run that, and then we'll remove it. To remove the auto, we just type auto with nothing else. So you get to see the Fred in action. I'm going to be using the Fred menu. I go into the Model 3, and I'm going to say auto free. Then I'm going to boot, which is a way to reboot from the thing. I'll pick Model 3 again, and it automatically runs the free command, which shows me my space on all my hard disk partitions. If I say auto again, it'll remove the thing. So if I reboot, I get the normal startup. So that's a handy way if you need something to run at the beginning and end. It's a handy way to do stuff. So one kind of cool feature, which a lot of the DOSes have, but I don't know where folks know or play around with it much, is kind of routing. And Vernon has link and route, which are subtly different. One, link sort of can, think of it as you can tee stuff from one place to another, and route just kind of reroutes it. So I wanted to do an example, and I'm going to go show my Max 80 here, where I'm going to route the printer to the serial output, and I'm going to list a basic file that's on the disk to a real Televideo 912 terminal. So there's a couple cryptic commands. I'm first going to have to set the COM settings for. The set COM command sets the baud rate and other things on the terminal. I can just type that into MULTIDOS. Then I route the printer to the serial output, and then I do the listing, and I have to use the P command to actually redirect to the printer. MULTIDOS, when you type list, will actually list it to the console, so you can use list to just see the file. So let's go ahead and watch that in action. Now I'm being very careful typing, because for those who have ever used the Max 80, it's really easy to not hit the return key and hit the back arrow by mistake. So it's a little hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm basically, I'm doing the listing now to the basic thing, and this is the Televideo. So with the P command, and when I actually run this, you'll see the output come across the serial line to the Televideo terminal. So this is a kind of interesting thing. You can do route and link are kind of interesting, and the devices command that I showed at the beginning shows you a setup of that. So you can actually see, I'll go back briefly if I can. Yeah, you can see that after this, the routing, it says PR is routed to SO0 at the location in memory. So you can actually use the devices command to see that you're doing this right. All right, another command he has is comparing two files. So the comp command is this. This is more a byte level compare. It's not like Unix diff or something. But I also wanted to show off, there's a cool little command called build that Vernon has, which is a handy way to create simple text files just using the operating system. So I'll kind of talk through this. Whoops, what happened there? I think I went too far. Yeah, here we go. Let's go to this one. So the build command, I just give it a file spec, and it will create that file. and then ask for input, and I can type a line, here, enter, and it'll type more lines, and I'm basically adding up lines into the file. And if I don't want to add things to the file, I hit the break key and it'll come back to the OS and close the file with that content. So I hit this as a test, it did build input, and I hit break because I only wanted to put one line in that file. And I can do a t2.text on, I'm using hard disk 2 here. So this is a text, not test, so there's one letter different here. All right, now I'm going to run the comp command. So I'm going to tell it which drive I'm on, and T1 text and T2 text. And it should identify that that one command is different. So you can see it recognized that the S is different than the X. So this can be handy if you're wanting to check if two files are exactly the same real quickly. The comp command is a nice way to do that. There is a memory command. I like this. It's a good memory tester, so you can boot MULTIDOS mem. The only complaint I have, which I'll maybe when Vernon's feeling better, I don't know why it doesn't tell me how much memory is in the computer. I think that would be a cool. It's not much very info-based, but it does do great testing. No thing of that because it runs for quite a while. So one big difference, super basic is a pretty big enhancement. So if you're a basic person, MULTIDOS is definitely worth checking out. You just run basic, and there's, I didn't show this, but this is the MULTIDOS manual that is for the current release, and it has about 50-60 pages on super basic, which go into a lot of detail about the nice features that it has. So let's kind of go through it. I want to do a simple program. We'll renumber it, and then Vernon also has indexing of basic variables. So if you're trying to figure out where your basic variable is used, you can quickly use that. So, whoops, we'll get that going. So I go into basic, and super basic comes up. And kind of, I'll give you a sense of what my twisted basic logic, you're going to see in the assembly language I'm a lot better. But I created A string and B string, one assigned foo, the other assigned bar. Then I'm going to print out foo bar with ... after it and loop. So this is a super sophisticated program here. Don't any of you copy this because I'll be right after you with the copyright thing. So you can see I'm using the colon to keep it all on the same line. So I print A string, a space, B string, then I'm going to print a ... And I'm using like kind of dumb basic numbering here. I'm going one by one. So when I renumber this, I'm going to use the O command, and I tell it the count I want to start at, what I want to increment by, and then the first number in the program I want to start up, and the number I want to end. So I'm going to say O, I'm going to start at 10, increment by 10, start at number 5, and go to 11. And in fact, I can list it and you can see it renumbered. But the nice thing about the O command is one of the complaints about renumbering is you might not want all of your program renumbered. You might want to keep certain things, and Vernon's thought of that, and it's very well handled. Finally, that's showing I can index A string, B string, and see where it's used in the program. So AstroCal, I'll kind of show the world's dumbest demo of this, but it's a really powerful programmable calculator that's built into MULTIDOS. It has a 100-page manual that I don't have a printout of with me, I forgot it. But the documentation is amazing. It's like a little VM. And one trick is I usually press 6 at startup. I'll go ahead and show the demo because it asks you kind of how to configure space in it. And his manual recommends until you get good at this, just hit 6 and take the smallest configuration. So because we're Tandy Assembly 2023, I added 2000 and then 23. And in fact, that equals 2023. So this is awesome. We're here. Also, just to show a little bit of the power, you can type in a number like 7, and then I can hit E, and that'll show me the natural log. The keys are set up for advanced mathematical functions. This is not designed to do simple, it's a simple calculator. You could use it as such, but it's also got pretty advanced capabilities. All right. The Zeus editor assembler. Vernon has a 200-page document about this, and I believe he actually still uses this to write the operating system and things. I know talking to Blair has used this. it's a pretty nice thing. I'll go ahead and start a demo. One trick I want to show you in this demo that I haven't shown yet is you can go between the 64 column mode in MULTIDOS with V64 or use 80 column mode, because I'm going to use a Model 4 for this demo, which will start in 80 column mode. But to get back to the more eye-friendly 64, I'll use V64 to go back. And you can use V80 to get back to the thing. So that works on the Model 4 machines. So V64, now I've got a little bigger text. I'm going to go into Zeus. All right, so to start editing my program, I just hit I, and I'm entering, I'm going to make a couple of system calls. This one is sort of like print a string, VOD, and it's at a certain hex position in the operating system, 4467 hex. Then I'm going to DOS, which is how you exit to the operating system. And that's at 40 something, I believe, 2D. So I'll do that. Now I'm going to define a string. Oh no, org. We got to make the program go somewhere in memory. So 5200H. And my goal here is I want to print hello Tandy assembly, but I'm going to kind of make a mistake here. We'll see this. So I just did hello. So this is I'm defining my string. Then I'm going to start the actual code of the program, which is at main. So I'm going to load into the HL register the address of message. Then I'm going to call VOD, which will output it. And then I'm going to call toDOS, which will end my program. So this is a little hello world program in Z80 assembly. End. All right, so now we get to see Zeus a little bit, end main. I hit break to get out of the I. And I think, oh, this is one mistake I do all the time. List doesn't list. L means load. So I'm kind of saying no. What I meant to say was P. So print my program, not list your program, sorry. And I'm going to use file spec Tim. And it'll go ahead and create my assembly language program. And then to actually get the assembler to go out, I use AO. A just does it in memory. To do AO, it'll output it to the disk, so I will get a command file. All right, create it. To exit Zeus, I use QU to go ahead and try my thing. QU exits. Now I'm back at MULTIDOS. And I'm going to take a look at Tim star. You can see my assembly language source and my executable. So let's run the executable, and you'll see my mistake. Oh, that's not looking right. Something went wrong. A couple of things went wrong. I didn't put the right string in, but I didn't terminate the string. So it's running off into memory, printing more stuff until it encounters the string. So I go back into Zeus, load my program back in, which I'm assuming if you really worked in this, you'd be doing this a lot. So I figure out my error is on 4, so I can do E4. And I'm going to go out to the edit the string and actually fix the string. So I'll use a quick command. Vernon has Control H that'll delete the rest of the string and say hello TA23, quote, comma, and then it's 03 hex is the terminating character in MULTIDOS for strings. In fact, I think it is for several operating systems. So I did take a look at the listing. I'm going to save my assembly, and I'm going to then AO to my output command. All right, no errors, that's good. Then QU to get out of Zeus, and then I'll try my Tim program. Yeah, so hello TA23, so that's great. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor of Zeus. It's a pretty powerful editor, assembler, and lots of, like I said, very complete documentation on how to use it. Now that you've sort of seen it, it's a little bit like a basic line editor for powerful for assembly language, so it's nice. Finally, kind of wrapping up, what is esoteric? What happened was, I guess in 1998, Vernon wanted to take advantage of some ideas he had to save memory on the Model 4. So esoteric is really just MULTIDOS for the Model 4 with 2 more K of memory available to it. So all the commands I've shown you, you can go into esoteric, and on the Fred, it's definitely supported by the Fred, and it's pretty similar. The only things I've noticed that are different is it's FU, not VFU, for the file utility. Otherwise, it operates exactly the same as the MULTIDOS one. And there doesn't seem to be a way to change the screen resolution. You're always in 80 character mode. You can't use V64 on this as well. It has different entry points, completely different entry points. So I'd have to change the hex addresses of VOD and toDOS in my assembly to make it run on esoteric. But it might be good if you are actually doing some stuff on a modern TRS-80, you get a little more memory, so Esoteric might be a good platform to develop some new software on. All right. And I think that's it, so I'll take any questions and wrap up. Well, I gave Ian a stick. But you talk to me, I've got sticks here, I can have people copy it onto their things. Most of this stuff, including all the documentation, Vernon runs through IRA. Most of you should know IRA's site, TRS, I think, -80.com, has all of the Vernon's manuals, the floppies, all of that sort of stuff. Will be, we're trying to get the Fred images out. Last year, Vernon had prototypes out, which a few people had, but he's really kind of upped the game a bit on support for the auto boot commands and things like that. So I've given it to Ian to include in his normal Fred distributions, and I'll also try to get, if anyone needs it, I can get it to him. So it's pretty straightforward. He works exactly like any other image. You just put the file in your SD card and you can boot MULTIDOS, like I was showing there. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
You said that's the back side of this?
Yeah, it changed. I think it's I've never actually used it because I don't have anything that's a two-sided disk. I guess I could cook that up in TRS-80 GP, but I think it goes to the other side.
So if you had, say, a single disk that was double-sided, would it appear as like 2 drives, 0 and 0?
I think it's for that if you did it. I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little out. If Vernon is yelling at the screen right now going, ah! I should know this, but I've never actually tried it. That's a great question. But it was in the manual, so I wanted to bring it up just so folks, it's actually good because now you can find out what it actually does and when you play around with MULTIDOS. So any other questions?
I was curious because I have a modified version of Tristos 1.3. This supports double-sided drives, but it treats them as each side is separate drives.
Yes. Well, I don't know, but we'll find out from Vernon. We can probably cook it up on TRS-80 GP and see what it does. So, Brendan?
Yeah, so for users who don't have a press or a hard drive or whatever, are all of these tools on a single MULTIDOS floppy, or are they across multiple floppies?
Like I said, we have the images. You don't need any hardware. George Phillips and Peter Phillips emulator, TRS-80 GP, everything I showed here today, except the one who was obviously real hardware, is the, which I don't think they emulate the Max 80. So it all runs just from any, they support Linux on Raspberry Pi, Linux on Intel, Macs, and Windows. So pretty much any computer you're likely to be running TRS-80 GP will run this. Then you could either do it with a floppy or you could do it with a Fred. Yes, on IRA's site, the floppies are there. And in fact, I'll mention that IRA's, if you have real floppies and you're struggling with this, IRA has a service where he'll send you like multi-boss boot disks. So he'll actually send you the 5¼ floppy so you can use that. In fact, that's how I started. I think I mentioned that up front. IRA sent me disks. I played around with all of them and like MULTIDOS a lot. So
you can also just download the virtual file images.
Correct. For the emulator or for if you have GoTex or something, that works perfectly fine, or SDCs. But if you have real floppies, IRA's service, he definitely includes MULTIDOS. He's a MULTIDOS. He likes it because it reads a lot of disks and he spends time reading a lot of disks, I believe.
But all these tools are available on a single MULTIDOS.
Yes. Yeah, some platforms where the disk isn't big enough, there'll be a boot disk and there'll be a utilities disk. So you do have both of them, but on the Fred version, it all comes on one hard drive. And I think for anything that's double-sided or whatever, that's all going to be on one disk as well. So
another comment when you were talking about executing the CAD or the directory command initially.
Yeah.
MULTIDOS is, as far as I know, it's the only one. It's very good at auto-detecting and supporting file formats from all the TRS-80 DOSs, or at least most of them.
Yes.
So if you have a file on TrisDOS or NewDOS or DOS Plus, and you want to transfer it to MULTIDOS, it should be as simple as inserting on a real machine.
Yes.
Inserting your disk in the drive, or I guess on an emulator as well, right? Catting that, it should read it,
Yeah.
copy it over.
Yes, and in fact, I covered the case, like you might need to use fixed date and you might need to unprotect the files, but that's pretty much all you need to do. If the password of the disk you don't know, that's a little more advanced, but Vernon also has a great zap command, so you can zap the password on the disk and get rid of it. So that's a little, I didn't want to go through that because you probably would have like all left as I did that. So that's pretty advanced. You're like looking at the hex of the disk and changing it, but it's pretty good there. Any other questions, or we'll wrap up? Again, kind of a beginner's tutorial. I'm a big fan of Vernon. Vernon was here last year. He's great. He answers questions and helps people out. And I think it's a fun operating system to kind of see that's been developed since the TRS-80 came out. Vernon's consistently developed this over all the time. So it's a pretty interesting thing, and he's always interested in new ideas. Like I said, last year he added Fred support. So.
And it's underrated. Not enough people use it. It's really
Yeah.
good.
All right, thank you very much.